Right now, Georgia's transgender sports ban is now in place and is drawing intense debate. A new poll shows how the younger generation feels about the subject. Also, the Senate fails to block President Trump's tariffs, but just barely. And pickleball's popularity is on the rise, but some neighbors are begging players to stop the racket. This is The Take. Let's get it. Hello and welcome. I'm Chesley McNeil, and this is The Take, where we go above and beyond the headlines and we look at the why and how stories are impacting you and your community. We talk to the experts. We bring them in to talk about the top stories, of course, and they share their take as well. We try to have a little fun while we're doing so as well. So let's talk about today's top story. Governor Brian Kemp signed a stack of education bills into law on Monday. One of them had to do with sports. Senate Bill 1 stops transgender athletes from playing on teams that match their gender identity. Here's what Governor Kemp had to say about the law while surrounded by supporters.
This common sense legislation is about what is fair and safe for our children. Girls should not have to share a playing field, a restroom, or a locker room with boys. I know I learned a lot of valuable lessons about life on the football field and the baseball diamond growing up. And it's not right to ask kids today to forego those lessons when facing someone biologically stronger and faster than them.
This law and similar laws that are passing in Republican states across the country are drawing criticism from the transgender community and the LGBT advocates. Joining me now is Shane Diamond, Director of the Communications and Advocacy for GLAAD and a transgender athlete. Shane, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me. It's great to be here this morning.
All right, talk to me about your take on the governor's comments there. What do you think the impact of this law will be?
I agree with Governor Kemp that all kids should have an opportunity to participate in sports, to learn lessons that we can only get through participating in sports. Lessons about how to win and not gloat, how to lose and not be a sore loser, about accountability, teamwork. But I disagree with Governor Kemp that we need to exclude transgender children and transgender youth in order to do that. Every youth deserves the opportunity to participate in sports with their peers. And that includes transgender youth.
Why do you think this is such a hot topic issue with lawmakers?
This actually has nothing to do with transgender youth or transgender student athletes. This is being used as a wedge issue to motivate the base, to rile up conservatives. And trans people like me, trans youth all over the country are being caught in the crosshairs of a fight that actually has nothing to do with us, but is being used as a way to energize and to get headlines.
All right, I want you to take a look at this poll right here. It's an NBC poll that says most adults oppose transgender women being allowed to compete in sports. Only 25% support it. That number goes up to 36% when we're talking about Gen X, or Gen Z rather. There's also a big gap when we talk about a gender gap, when we talk about young men being against that, women doing that. What do you think about these numbers when you read that?
I think this is a framing issue. We're hearing in a lot of these bills like SB1, like some of the executive orders that came in Trump's first 100 days, that are inaccurate, that are describing transgender women as men, which is inaccurate. It's false. Transgender women are women. Transgender men are men. No one is advocating for men to participate in women's sports. What we are advocating for is transgender women and girls who are women and girls to be able to participate in girls and women's sports accordingly. And I think these polls are an example, if nothing more, of how how media representation of this issue is skewing people's understanding of what's actually happening here. And again, I don't know that there are any transgender student athletes participating in sports in the state of Georgia. And so this is, once again, a solution in search of a problem.
It sounds like the biggest proponent would be the strength factor, right? When you talk about a transgender and the strength of a man versus a woman. What's your take on that?
This is a talking point that has been used a lot, not only in the past 100 days or the past year or so, but over the course of a decade, we've been having this conversation about trans inclusion in sports. And it's one that we hear often, that people assigned male at birth are bigger, faster, stronger, more athletic, and this is not true. And it is inherently sexist and misogynist. It's saying that even if a woman is successful, if she's at the top of her sport, if she's fast and strong and tall and coordinated, that no matter how good she is, she'll never be as good as a male counterpart, which is not true. And what this does when we talk about transgender inclusion in sports is this sets anyone up, any woman or girl who is successful at her sport, if she's tall, if she's fast, if she's strong, if she wins a race every now and then, if she loses more races than she wins, this puts her gender on the chopping block, and it puts her under scrutiny for what we're now seeing as like sex verification testing. And so it is not true that people assigned male at birth are bigger, faster, stronger. Testosterone is not the be-all, end-all of someone's athletic performance. And any attacks on women to prove their womanhood, if they are successful, is really just rooted in sexism, misogyny, and frankly, white supremacy.
Shane, tell me what you would like to see from lawmakers going forward.
I would love to see lawmakers take action on things that Americans actually care about: the price of groceries, public education, safety, how we are moving through our daily life. You know, I think the economy is on everyone's mind right now. I don't think transgender athletes have anything to do with the economy, so I'd love to see lawmakers focusing on issues that Americans are actually concerned about.
All right, Shane Diamond joining us this morning. Thank you for your insight. Really appreciate you joining us on the show.
Thank you so much for having me.
All right, take care. All right, one of the other big stories of the day, starting this morning, parking at Hartsfield-Jackson is going to cost you a lot more. Yeah, airport parking will now range from $10 an hour to $100 maximum daily flat rate, depending on where you park. For a full breakdown of all these new prices, just head over to 11alive.com. We got the breakdown for you right there. And while parking is going up, the price of a plane ticket is going down. Tomorrow on The Take, we're going to look at why people are paying less and how long that trend could last, hopefully a long time. Let's take a look at our forecast for today, and we have some showers around the area this morning at least, but those showers will get out of the way. We'll get a mix of sun and clouds as we head through much of the day today. It is going to be a warm one. We're looking at 84 degrees for the afternoon high temperature thanks to that southerly flow that we have coming in. Extended outlook shows tomorrow much of the same. You're looking at scattered showers, possibly some thunderstorms around as well, 40% chance for that, but even higher on Saturday now as the front gets hung up. That front will be moving through the area, at least it's forecast now to move through the area on Saturday. So that means through the day on Saturday, we'll have rounds of showers and thunderstorms. Not wet all day long, but it should clear out of the way. By the time we get to Sunday, we'll get the sunshine back in here and some cooler temperatures coming our way as we start the work week next week. Don't go anywhere, folks. We're right back right after this. All right, welcome back to the show. This morning, President Donald Trump's opponents are pushing back on his claims that a new economic report is not his fault. It shows the U.S. economy shrinking in the first quarter of the year, and an effort to rein in his tariff policy failed. Here to talk more about it is NBC Washington correspondent Alice Barr, who's been covering politics for years now. And Alice, who is the president blaming for this report?
Chesley, well, he's blaming former President Biden and arguing that because this is a quarterly report and he didn't take office until 20 days into the period of time, still he was certainly there, the lion's share, that he was hindered by inheriting the Biden economy that he has argued was left a mess for him. He has in the past, taken credit alternately or not for the stock market. And for instance, now he's also claiming that the stock market is down because of former President Biden rather than because of his own policies, though there have been times in the past when he has taken credit for the stock market linearly before where we are now, meaning that he's saying now it's still because of Biden, but when things were up over the course of the past couple months, there were times when he said it was because of him. And we should also note that though he's saying right now that the problem is in having inherited the Biden economy, economists are pointing to tariff policies that are certainly those of President Trump. And what we're really seeing at play with this slight contraction in gross domestic product for the first quarter is that businesses rushed out to buy imports before tariffs kicked in, and that dragged down U.S. production. So economists are saying it's not necessarily just a signal that things are headed toward a recession. Usually 2 quarters of that would indicate a recession, but that there was a certain set of circumstances here because of the tariffs that led to this, but might not be the dismal economic marker that you might otherwise think.
Gotcha. What about the failed report from senators? They tried to roll back those tariffs. What does this tell us about the congressional support for his economic policies?
Right. So there was a failed effort on the Senate floor to try to pass a repeal, essentially. It was an effort to try to revoke the emergency that President Trump called for when he put these tariffs into place. And there was a group of senators, including a small number of Republicans, who went along and signed this, co-signed this, and said that authority was not done correctly and that tariffs should be done with Congress taken into account. But it wound up in a 49-49 tie, and then Vice President J.D. Vance was able to break the tie and essentially kill that effort, which would have died in the House regardless. But the fact, I think, that there was any kind of bipartisan support and anything that came close to passing, indicates that there are some Republicans who are willing to go on the record and say that they're concerned about the way this tariff policy is going and the potential impacts on the economy. The bigger message, though, that it didn't work, and that at the end of the day, there is a much larger number of Republicans who are willing to give President Trump the benefit of the doubt and allow him to play out this signature piece of his agenda.
Got it. All right, Alice, appreciate your report. As always, we'll see you again tomorrow.
Thank you.
Yeah, you hear that? That's the sound of pickleball, the fastest growing sport in America. Yeah, it's causing some racket in some communities. Yeah, millions are picking up their paddles, but for some, the noise and the crowds are creating a real problem. Caitlin Ross takes us inside the clash between fun and frustration, and she's making the noise herself right there. Is it, Caitlin, really all about the noise that's causing the problem here?
It really is. It's just that constant tap, 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 and it's incessant. People who live near these courts say they never get a break. Pickleball is so popular, people are playing from sun up to sundown, and they say the peace that they formerly knew in their backyards is gone.
It is a loud sport. Does it have any impacts on property values?
The people who think that this is negatively impacting their property values say they have the data to back it up. They argue that homes that abut pickleball courts directly take a 20% hit in their property value. So that is huge for people who are looking to sell their homes in the next year or two. As these courts are being constructed, they're really worried about it.
Wow. So what do they want to happen? What are the neighbors saying they want to happen?
They want them out of their backyards. A lot of the people who we talk to say they're not against pickleball, they just don't want it happening in their backyards. They don't want to hear this sound from sunup to sundown. We talked to one guy who had a really strong argument about this.
Wow.
It's the sound of somebody re-roofing their house. It's the sound of 2 of your neighbors re-roofing their house from sunup to sundown. Pock, pock, pockety pock. The worst thing, what you miss when somebody's re-roofing their house, is they don't scream when they hit a nail, and they don't scream when they hit a nail just right. That's what you get with pickleball.
And he says it is constant. He lives just behind those courts, but the funny part about John is he plays too. He says he loves playing pickleball, and the people who are arguing against this are not anti-pickleball. They're just anti-pickleball in their backyards.
Wow. So, I mean, it's becoming so popular. The guy you interviewed plays, is complaining about it. What are the people who enjoy it saying about these complaints?
A lot of them understand. They know that this is a loud sport, that it does cause a disruption. And so there's a number of different cities and towns that are trying to work out solutions. So in Tucker, Georgia, they're considering building these courts. And citizens are coming out en masse to protest them. They're actually considering a lawsuit against the city to try and stop the construction of these courts. In Summer Grove, it's an HOA community in Noonan. They already have those courts that are just 80 feet away from some homes.
Wow.
And they're planning on filing a lawsuit against their HOA to try to get them to move those courts. Some people have tried these noise canceling fences, but they have to be about 12 feet tall in the air to actually make a difference. And then other places like Avondale Estates are forcing people to play with these soft balls and noise canceling paddles. So people are really looking for solutions, but I gotta tell you, they have been really hard to come by.
Wow. Are there any long-term solutions, or did you just mention a few of those?
So Peachtree City is actually looking at a really expensive long-term solution. They're looking to move the pickleball courts altogether. They have had such strenuous opposition to these courts being in people's backyards that they're saying, all right, we're just going to move them. They're going to move them to a place that's away from homes. People will have to drive to get to those courts, but the folks who live near them say it's really worth it to have it out of their backyards.
Wow. Or maybe even go inside, right? Maybe inside facilities.
Oh, that's a great idea.
Yeah. I mean, I play tennis. I haven't played pickleball yet. Although I'm getting up there in age and people saying, hey man, you need to move to pickleball. Have you played yet?
I have played pickleball, and to be honest, my in-laws absolutely kick my butt in pickleball. They are really good at it.
So,
it's really fun, but it is loud, it's noisy.
Are you trying to say it's a seniors sport?
So it started out that way. It did start out that way, but now it's actually the fastest growing sport in the United States. That's how many people are picking up a paddle. The data we have shows 13.6 million people in the U.S. are playing. So this is a sport popular with all age groups.
All right, you convinced me. Sign me up. Sign me up. Maybe easier on my knees.
There you go.
See. All right, Caitlin, thanks so much for your report. Really appreciate it. You can watch Caitlin's full story tonight at 11 right here on 11Alive Plus. I'll be watching. It saves me on my knees, perhaps, you know. Plenty more stories for you coming up. This is The Take on 11Alive Plus. All right, Georgia, it is tax day. Yeah, your calendars aren't wrong, though. Yeah, the tax deadline for the entire state got pushed back this year because of Hurricane Helene. Joining me now to talk about the changes is friend of the show and financial advisor, Andrew Poulos. Good to see you, my friend.
Leslie, good morning. How are you?
I'm doing pretty good. Talk to me, Andrew, about the couple extra weeks. You know, was it useful for people from the impact of the storm?
Yeah, when the Hurricane Helene came around, the IRS changed the deadline. Initially, it was intended to change the 23 deadline because the storm came around just around October 15th, which is the extended deadline, the extension deadline for 2023, tax year 2023, which was last year. So at that point, they made the decision to go ahead and change by 2 weeks the 24 deadline as well to coincide with 23. So if you have 24 filing and you have not done it, today is the day. If you have a 23 tax return on extension from last year, today is also your day. So you're actually not late if you have not taken action to file either of these two big years.
Gotcha. I don't know if we have the numbers in or not, but do you think people took advantage of the extra time?
Well, I can tell you that in 23, there's been a lot of stragglers and a lot of people who have had storm issues throughout the state. So those folks were affected and probably are taking advantage of the extra time. As far as 24, honestly, it hasn't really been, too popular out there. People haven't really heard about the deadline. If you probably will see today when folks figure out that today's the deadline, basically. But a lot of people were on the April 15th calendar. So I'd venture to say that today's probably going to be a lackluster day compared to what April 15th normally is.
Yeah. For the procrastinator out there, what should they do if they still haven't filed yet?
File an extension, right? At this point, you've got hours to file an extension or file your return. Don't rush to file something that's not correct, and you know that it's not correct. That's only going to get you in trouble. I always say, if you file something that's not correct, knowingly or unknowingly, and you get a letter from the IRS, it's going to be, you're going to be challenged, and I'm going to say good luck to you in trying to get that matter resolved with the current climate, basically, and the personnel cutbacks at the IRS. So do yourself a favor, file that extension today, and you probably will need to file Form 4868, which is the extension form by mail. Certified mail is the only way you should send anything to the IRS.
And how long does that extension last?
Extension is going to be on a normal time frame, so it's going to last until October 15th. So if you file that extension today, whether you filed it April 15th or today, it's still the same timeline for October 15th.
Okay, all right. Say I filed today, when could I expect my refund?
File today, but what we've been seeing so far this year, probably about 4 to 5 weeks. Actually, it's been rather quick. The state has been a little bit slower from what we've been seeing in issuing refunds from some folks than the IRS. Surprisingly enough, I know this sounds a little bit crazy, but the IRS, man, has been quick to issue refunds this year. Gotcha.
Well, speaking of refunds, the governor announced a tax rebate. How soon could those start rolling out?
Well, you're not going to see anything with the state tax rebate until you file your 23 and your 24 tax return. Those are two other requirements. It all is based on you qualifying with the 23 and 24 returns. So if you go on extension today and you file, let's just say in October, you're not going to see that additional state tax refund probably sometime until after you file October 15th. If you file today or in the coming weeks, then probably within a matter of weeks, you probably will see that refund. So it just really all depends on when you meet those requirements for having your 23 tax return and your 24 return submitted.
And you always give us good advice about what to do with our money. When that tax rebate comes in, give us some ideas of what we should do with that.
Look, don't spend it unless you really have a pressing matter. If you don't have an emergency savings fund saved up, we can see that we're possibly going into a recession. Save that money and use it for good purposes.
You put the pressure on me dressing so nice. I got to take my rebate and go out here and buy me some more pocket squares and ties, man.
Just let me know when you go. We'll go together.
My man. All right, Andrew. Really appreciate you joining us. Thank you for your insight.
We'll see you soon.
All right. Could this be a sign of the times, folks? McDonald's says the store traffic fell the first quarter of due to economic uncertainty hit fast food lovers. Yeah, this is a global problem that we're talking about, but the drop-off was worst here in the United States. McDonald's has responded by beefing up its value menu and offering its $5 menu deal right on through the summer. Less folks going into McDonald's. I got my take on that. But that is not my final take. Okay, stay tuned, folks. I have a final take for you coming up. You're watching The Take. This is 11Alive Plus. All right, despite the clouds and the threat for rain, we're looking at temperatures on the warm side today, 77 by noon, on our way to 84 for an afternoon high. There could be a couple of isolated showers around before a line of showers and thunderstorms will approach our area. Now, we're not expecting that to arrive here until after 7 or 8 o'clock tonight. It'll move into the far northwestern counties first and then down toward the metro area. A lot of it will be falling apart. And so there is a level 1 threat for severe weather over us. That means an isolated strong severe thunderstorm is possible, not very widespread. 82 degrees for the high temperature on Friday. Once again, a level 1 threat, 40% chance for that rain. And then we'll be looking at a 60% chance for the rain on Saturday. Now, this is because a front is going to move into the area. We're looking at this off and on as we head through the day. Much of Saturday, it'll clear out on Sunday, and we'll have a beautiful start to next week. All right, before we go, my final take today. It's this time of the year where social media is flooded with emotional videos about kids accepting into college. But what about those that didn't make it to the college of their choice? Well, shout out to one group of teenagers who turned that negative into a positive. They did this thing called rejection cakes, where it's a new thing that's popping up on social media feeds. One particular TikTok video from Massachusetts high school senior got her friends together, got over 5 million views. Cece and her friends decorated a cake with miniature flags from the schools they got rejected about, right? This theme needs to be a trend amongst teens that feel like the college admission process is just daunting and stressful, and then you don't get accepted. Well, most teens are expressing that these rejection cakes make them feel like they're not alone when it comes to college rejection letters, especially during a time when those videos are starting to ramp up. Look, life is going to bring some challenges and disappointments. Shout out to these viral teens for turning that grief around and meeting their troubles head on. I love it, love it, love it. That's all we have for you today, folks. Make it a great day, and be sure to encourage somebody today, okay?